Hi everyone, welcome to Meet Me Downtown. I'm Mike.
And I'm Aaron.
And we are both members of the Augusta Downtown Alliance, a 501c3 and a member of Main Street America, a network of communities across the country focused on downtown revitalization. Today we're coming at you live from Sand Hill Bagel Co, right in the heart of Mill Park. Aaron, you want to tell us a little bit about that?
I would love to tell you a little bit about it. This building is the last building of the old Edwards Mill that burnt down in the 80s. We think it was the transformer building or the powerhouse. And this building or this project really personifies what I've seen over the last 10 years happening in downtown Augusta with entrepreneurs who have been investing in their communities. They've been bringing businesses downtown. They've been renovating apartment buildings, and people have been moving into downtown. And actually, even just the other day, we were chatting with our friend Richard, who was just talking about when a family walked by, that, you know, his dream was really about creating a community, and we're seeing that downtown community. We're actually seeing that happening, right now from
Absolutely.
all of these investments that have been made over the last 10 years. But we could probably even go back 30 years to actually see where this actually got started here in Augusta. So, but with that, we are here with Victoria Abbott. So Victoria is our boss. She's the president of the Augusta Downtown Alliance. She's also the president of the Augusta Rotary, executive director of Bread of Life. Man, you sure have a lot of jobs.
I know.
And you're also a longtime resident of Augusta.
I am. Thank you. Thank you both for having me.
Hey, we're glad to have you here.
Yeah.
Thank you for coming.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about Bread of Life. What do you do and who do you serve?
Sure. We serve the low-income and homeless in the city of Augusta. Just over 40 years ago, Carolyn Nyhoff saw a need in this community and got together with 7 families and bought a building and started the soup kitchen, which is really was a key need at the time. And Bread of Life has grown ever since then. We have 2 shelters that have 54 beds, a veteran shelter and a family shelter. And then we have 83 housing units across the city of Augusta. That said, what do? I am thankful and to be able to be part of that organization and give back every day. The soup kitchen serves home cooked meals in restaurant style, which is a pretty neat way to do it as opposed to assembly line. And I get to be a part of changing people's lives, which I really just wanted to help people. That's all I've ever wanted to do.
Victoria, I think there's a misconception with the people or who we think the people are who are actually relying on services like Bread of Life. Can you just give us an example? Because I think a lot of people, when they hear soup kitchen, they're thinking homeless people, and they get a certain idea of what that means in their head. Can you just tell us a little bit more about who are the types of people that you guys serve on a daily basis?
Sure. It's really everybody. There's one gentleman who, I call it our old man table, which they're delightful, and they're there every day, breakfast and lunch. And one of them was a school teacher who just didn't have the retirement level that he needs and can't afford the level of groceries. That's all increased. All costs have increased for everybody, right? But when you're on a fixed income, it's very difficult. So he comes down every day and eats with us.
Well,
it's not just, he's not necessarily, to interrupt,
No,
not
okay.
necessarily homeless, but in the low-income housing, it's not people who are, Bread of Life is very proud to meet people where they're at and give them a hand up, not a handout. And we're here to help people, and feeding is a basic need.
My experience with people who live a life of service, and I'm thinking, people that I know, they're firefighters, they're police, they're military, it actually really goes back to how they were raised, how they grew up. And just for someone who actually serves the community as much as you do, imagine you have to have some sort of a story about like where this actually came from, because I imagine there's got to be something there.
I believe the universe has a lot to say, if it's God, if it's universe, or whatever is your center force here. I feel like my parents always instilled, like, you will give back at some point, and you will get, college is not a choice. It's you're going. It's going to happen. And just, you want something, you work for it. And so the work ethic has been instilled since Dairy Queen, circa 1990 something. So, and then I think my brother and I were being particularly difficult, probably. And my mom signed us up to work at a soup kitchen, Sacred Heart, in Hollowell. And I mean, we were young. And I was horrified by the food. Mom was a home-cooked meal every night. We didn't go to McDonald's. We didn't do those sort of things unless it was like a super treat. So I went and served in the soup kitchen, and was just eyes wide open. At the time, I went to St. Mary's School, it's now St. Michael's, but right on Western Avenue. And Lithgow Library was like a second home. I love reading, and I loved going there after school. And so seeing a population of like adults that were in need, it had a huge impact on me. I also don't like spaghetti sauce anymore because that was my job, to ladle out the spaghetti sauce. I was like, this does not look good. I'm sure it was delicious, but I was just a kid. So I think that was a pivotal point for me. But I also, in high school, for whatever reason, I was president of the Key Club. I liked giving back. I liked volunteering. I've always been a volunteer. So I think just the ethics and values that my parents instilled in my brother and I guess. And maybe that day at the soup kitchen really hit me. But
so since that day at the soup kitchen, have you noticed any kind of changes regarding that kind of population within this area?
We can visibly see the toll addiction is taking in our world today. You can walk down Water Street. You can walk through Mill Park right now driving in. You can see that toll. And I don't remember that as a kid. I know you probably both grew up in larger cities, and this is a very small city. It wasn't something, there might have been, some drunks or whatever walking around downtown, but it wasn't anything to the level that now it is nerve-wracking. And there's people tend to come into my office and say, oh, there's people across in the parking lot. Can you go make sure they're not dead? And I'm like, well, yes, but it's a public parking lot too. And then I walk over and there's trash and drug paraphernalia, and they're, passed out. And that's not anything I remember as a kid. So I think it is different now, and it is the results of a lot of drug use that's addiction. The growth of addiction, I don't have the data on that for this country or this state or this city, but it's definitely different now.
I mean, I came here in 2016. That's when I first moved up here. And right then we were in the throes of the heroin epidemic, which was moving its way, up through Maine. Do you see, it's been 7 years since then, do you see addiction levels from what you're noticing from Bread of Life? Do you see them getting a little bit better, or is it just continuing to get worse?
It's not getting better. So therefore it's getting worse. Which, that observation has led me to see a need in our community. Even before the winter overnight warming center, I could see that people didn't have a place to go. And, I did grow up here, and I do have a ton of pride in this city. And I do a lot of volunteer work and work in this city. And I don't want parents not to come in or not to come downtown because there's people passed out everywhere. And I also know the people passed out and feed them every day. And I can't imagine that they're super proud to be passed out. I think addiction has a lot of different facets to it. And so in fulfilling that need, Bread of Life is in the works to open a third shelter, because our shelters right now, we have a family shelter with children, so we can't have sex offenders. And part of the programmatic activity there is you can't be drunk or high because of the kids. You need to go off property. Well, that's kind of the loophole of where do people go? And, talking with my board and staff, and it's like, we're gonna do this. And we're very close to opening. By fall, we'll have a low barrier shelter where people can work on addiction recovery and
Very
really
cool.
look into, we're calling it Arts House, Addiction, Recovery, and Trauma. And looking at the root cause, the holistic package that Bread of Life offers is where is the root cause that we need to work through and help you work through. You need to work through it. We'll help you do that and get staff in here and get group therapies in to help you get out of the cycle of poverty, get out of the cycle of addiction, and change your life, empower you to change your life. So it's very exciting.
Does this mean, though, for someone to actually be able to get into that shelter, they have to be committed to getting off drugs?
They have to be committed to changing their life. What that looks like for each individual person. There's no cookie cutter. If it's, I think let's akin this to having a cigarette addiction. we can all picture a pack of cigarettes. You can see what I don't do. Somebody who smokes 3 packs a day. If something that they're like, okay, by the time I'm through the shelter and going into housing, I want to be down to a pack. Okay.
So there is a desire to work on that. Like that's part of one of the conditions to actually be able to attend or not?
Well, I don't want to use a condition. I think that the shelter, it's going to be each person, I say to staff all the time, we're going to meet people where they're at. What are your goals? What are you going to work on? And maybe like when people are addicted is what happened there? Where can we work on? If it is PTSD from a veteran situation, then let's work on the PTSD, because addiction is a symptom of something bigger.
Yep. It's traumatic.
Yeah.
Right.
Wait, so Victoria, I know you have told us about attending a homelessness conference in San Francisco. Can you just maybe tell us a little bit about the conference and some of the things that maybe you learned attending?
Sure. It's put on by the National Alliance of Homelessness, which is they have a DC conference every summer, and that's sold out in 20 hours. It's just about 3,000 people get together twice a year and really share the success stories, and also work on what's next and how can we evolve as people who provide shelter, people who provide this work. So this was great. I'd never been to San Francisco. We had a blast. I went with my director of operations so we could divide and conquer and eat up all the information we could. And, 2 of the big pieces coming out of that are, one of them was out of a speaker from Dallas, Texas, and talking about the encampments and how to successfully take down the encampments. And it's not giving a 24-hour police notice. It's not the city coming in and whatever, which our city doesn't do. It really was looking at the social service agencies, everybody coming together. So in our example, for Augusta, it would be, the warming center coming together with general assistance and Kennebec Behavioral Health and KV CAP and Bread of Life to be like, okay, we all need to get together, create a plan, which is essentially mirroring what Dallas did. And, Public Works had to be involved. And it was like a 5-week process to go through the encampments, which are huge. It's Dallas, right? And talk to people. And every day, like, okay, well, on this date, July 1st, this you can't be here. Your options are A, B, or C, and none of it includes staying here. So it's shelter, it's housing, whatever. So that was a really great session to show how the social service agencies in the city need to come together and work on this collectively. There's no egos. There's no one organization that's going to fix it. There's no need to create another organization to come in and do this work, right? Another session that was really impactful was another low barrier addiction recovery shelter. Because in my research, it's been hard to find a model. I don't want to reinvent the wheel. I observed an issue working with different organizations in the city, and it's like, okay, this is what we're going to do, and having people's full support to do such things. It's like, okay, well, literally, I have to reinvent a wheel that I don't know what it looks like. So meeting this woman from upstate New York and learning about how she structured her addiction recovery shelter, and they're up to 4 in that area, which is like, okay, good. We've got an ally. We've got somebody who can be like, this is how we do it. Take this structure, mold it to Bread of Life, and continue from there. So it was a really informative conference for sure, and
very cool.
Beautiful area of the world to go visit for sure.
Raising money for our cause, supporting our neighbors, helping to recognize those that should be recognized, providing educational opportunities, working together to make someone's day just a bit brighter. Our employees enjoy being a part of making our communities a better place to live and work. Skowhegan Savings Bank.
Can you maybe just share, are there 2 or 3 things that you're going to be implementing with the new shelter, with the low barrier addiction recovery shelter? Like, what were some of the things from the person from upstate New York that you're going to bring back?
Yeah, well, one of the pieces was, and this is something we see all the time, in the soup kitchen and when people come into shelter, when you're living, when you have to carry all of your belongings on your back, or you're in the woods and people are stealing your stuff, you're constantly in fight or flight. And I can't even think of an example of when people who have grown up in, middle class America, even lower middle class, there's very few times that you're in fight or flight ever, which is wonderful, right? When you're in the woods and constantly looking over your back, if you're a female, single female, and you have your own tent, you're constantly like sexual assault, crime, drug use. It's a constant fear. So people are in fight or flight often. And so coming into shelter, it's really having, like, you're in a place, this is your bed. This is when you come into shelter, you get your bed in a bag. This is yours to keep forever. Free laundry, hot showers, like, come in and just settle in and get your space, because for some people, they haven't had their own bed or space in a long time. So for this shelter, coming in the first 2 weeks, the model is going to be the first 2 weeks, you're just there to like decompress, and 2 weeks isn't enough time to decompress after years of being, in fight or flight, or months of being in fight or flight, but 2 weeks where not a ton is going to be put on you. And then the next 2 weeks are looking at, okay, what do you need? Do you need an ID, Social Security card, voucher, looking at the different services that case management might have to line up. So weeks 3 and 4, a lot of times people don't have their IDs, or, it's looking at, do you need your ID? Do you need your Social Security card? What services do you need to line up? What therapies? Is it AA, NA? What are we looking at to provide for you and help you get access to? And then week 5, 6 are really deep diving into the program and empowering, the staff are going to empower people to like work and hold them accountable to their reaching their goals and helping them every step of the way.
So what happens after then, maybe the first 6 weeks? Will they continue to stay there for a period of time? Is the goal to help to get them to that next point where they can then transition to what's next? Yeah,
well, part of getting the paperwork set up on week 3, 4 is looking at vouchers. If their goal is housing, if their goal is, sometimes with veterans, they have the income. They don't qualify for vouchers or any support in that way, but they have to work through a few things to get to a point to be in a home by themselves. 4 walls can be very scary, very, very scary. And quiet can be very, very scary. So really setting up, is it vouchers? Is it housing? Is it buying a house? Maybe it's not Augusta. Some people come in and they've been in Augusta for 5 years and their family is in Ashland. It's like, okay, well, let's see what's available there and let's work towards that goal. So there's not going to be a time limit on, okay, it's week 6, ding, ding, ding. Yeah. It's each person is individual, and we're going to just figure out what the best solution is for them. And right now, in Augusta and surrounding areas, there is a housing situation. There's not a lot of housing. There's like 0, 1 bedrooms that are affordable right now. So even if you had an income, where are you getting an apartment?
Exactly. Would you say like housing has gone up by 15% since 2020, since the start of the pandemic? A lot of that is driven from people coming up from Boston, coming up from New York, coming up from Connecticut, looking for, now that remote work is widely available, looking for a more affordable state. And it's driven Maine's cost of living kind of through the roof, especially in the real estate market. It's also put a lot of pressure on the rental market. I think statewide, like I looked up the statistics, and in 2019, we were already 10,000 units short for multifamily. And in Augusta, I was reading an article, and we're something like 845 units short in this city for rentals. And essentially what you're getting is, for every 1 rental on average statewide, you're getting about 10 applicants or 10 inquiries per 1 unit. Do you think that that's kind of what is kind of the driving force behind a lot of, because the homeless population has certainly increased over the last couple of years. I think by 2/3, according to some statistics, it was hovering around 2,000. Now we're hovering about 4,400, 4,500. Do you think that it's tied in with housing, or do you think there are other things?
Well, like I said at City Council last night, there's no magic wand or there's no one catalyst for what's going on. I think with the increase, COVID showed us all, like, maybe we should have more in savings than we actually do as grown-ups, okay? But then now we're in this weird space of post-COVID where, we're back to, and that pain that we went through before, we don't feel it anymore. I mean, I'll speak for myself, but there's articles about this where people are back to the levels of spending, et cetera, et cetera. So I think a lot of people got unhoused because of losing a job. You know, the service industry, went like flatlined. That was horrific. And recovering from that is hard. We still have places that aren't open like they used to be. I think, you know, before there was a kind of a standard in the shelter industry of so many days in shelter, and then they had to go on to housing. With COVID and post-COVID, it's like there's a bottleneck. Like I said at the beginning of the podcast, there's, you know, warming center should lead into shelter. Shelter should be a pause to get into housing. Well, now there's a bottleneck. There's no housing. I don't have, Bread of Life does not have a 1-bedroom. We have 3 units open right now. That's it. And people have no place to go. So if you think about, you know, people who don't have, there are a couple different scenarios. People who have been evicted, right? The eviction moratorium was up, I think it was about a year ago now. People are evicted. Landlords won't rent to them again. Where are they going to go? So another scenario is, you know, there is a boom right now. It's a great time to be a property owner. It's a building owner. It's lucrative, where before it was like, well, in the winter I barely make any money, and in the summer I can make a little bit of money to repair the buildings, right? In this area in Maine, because you couldn't get the rents that you needed to get. Now you can. So people are buying property and evicting people, and then tripling the rent because they can, and they can get it, which is wonderful on one spectrum, right? I'm not dissing any part of the, you know, economics of life. But there's a gentleman in the soup kitchen every day, 85 years old. His rent went up $300. That was the last $300 he had in the month. He can't stay. Yep. And so we're talking about shelter. 85 years old.
It's insane.
That breaks my heart. You know, somebody said to me, this work must break your heart. And I'm like, it most days, no, because people are wanting change, and to provide that hand up is such a wonderful thing that I can provide and help in this, you know, in service to people. This does break my heart. This one guy, and I don't want to put him in shelter because he's a single man, so he'll be in a bunk room. He's not going to be on the top bunk, obviously. But then what? Where is he going to go after that?
Yep.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
The city doesn't have anything for him because his landlord raised his rent $300. The fact that he was only living on $300 a month, let's just pause and think of $300 in a whole month.
That is crazy.
That's all your slush income.
Wow.
Think about that.
Wow.
Well, I'm also just thinking too, because I've been hearing about the city doing an increase of property taxes by 10% too, right? So
it's down to 10 from 11. That's good.
Oh, it's down to, okay.
I don't know.
So it just seems though from the private market, you know, from business owners who want to increase the prices of rent, but also too, you know, taxation. There's a lot of factors that are coming in that are basically pricing people out of the market.
Well, and it's even in the 83 units I have, they're not all, some are full market rent, some are voucher, some are partial voucher. But the HUD, the government program across the country, they don't increase the voucher reimbursement at the rate that rent is being increased. I hope I said that to make sense.
Yes.
So there are 2 buildings that Bread of Life has right now that we lose money on because the cost of water, heat, the facilities team to mow, plow.
That's incredible.
We lose money on them. So, but we're a nonprofit and we're here to not we're here for that.
Yeah.
But it does speak to the government needs to recognize that some of their vouchers need to track up about $500 a month to cover where rent, not even full market rent. This isn't even hitting like what people can ask for, the $1,400 rent for one bedroom or $1,500 for an efficiency. This is not what I'm talking about. This is a 1 bedroom, 1 bathroom.
I wanted to ask you, you're doing a lot of great work, but I also imagine that one of the things that can also maybe make it a little bit harder is, what is it like operating Bread of Life when it comes to the downtown community, other businesses, residents? What's your experience with that?
Well, I because I have been part of the Augusta Downtown Alliance for 4.5 years now, I always tease Michael, especially like the North End matters. And I'm always just, because there was some vacant buildings, and before the theater project really got to where it is, Bread of Life's been there for 39 years and the offices have been there for a long time. And it's like, hey, North End matters. Make sure we're expanding our programs, all of Water Street, not just the end that gets the most newsworthy things, I suppose. So all in all, because Bread of Life has been there for so long, people understand that it's there. There's a lot of people, I get phone calls. This is something I get frustrated with, like, your people. It's like, well, it's illegal to own people, so they're not mine. They're the people I get to serve every day, and I like that. Well, you need to go talk to your people. You need to, maybe before you open up lunch service, you should have your people wait across the street. Like, well, nobody gets mad at me when I'm waiting outside of state lunch for my table. And nobody gets mad at me or calls the cops on me if I'm, standing outside talking to a friend for an hour. That's all right. If I loiter anywhere on Water Street, I'm not getting spoken to or the police called on me. And I think that that's been a little frustrating. That said, people cannot smoke within 20 feet of a business door. Fun fact. I remind a lot of patrons, and I would do it on the south end of Water Street too. Like, you cannot smoke within 20 feet of this door. And I say it for all of the businesses around me. I do not appreciate littering. I think that's the Girl Scout and Catholic schoolgirl in me that don't litter. There's a trash can right there. So I think I definitely helicopter mom a lot of people on the North End, whether they participate in the soup kitchen or my office or not, because as a community, there's the broken window theory, right? This is a college professor that there's this community that was a thriving community, and then somebody, left a building and some kids like broke the window and broke in. And that's the catalyst that takes the neighborhood down. Yep. It's a very it's a fabled a story of what can happen in a community. And I feel like littering is part of that. Like, let's not litter. There's trash cans provided by the city. The ADA has purchased trash cans to help make sure we keep it nice down here. So all of Water Street and anywhere, I've done many events in my event planning time at Mill Park. It's like, well, we're going to clean up after, and we're going to make sure it's how we left it. And I think I work hard in the alcoves that are all through Water Street to make sure I don't think people should be using them as bedrooms or bathrooms. I think they need to come into shelter, go to the warming center when it was open. So I understand, and I tell the people using them as bathrooms or bedrooms or loitering or smoking and say, these are people's homes if it's an entrance to an apartment, and these are people's businesses, and you can't do this.
I've often wondered about this myself, and I'm wondering if you have maybe a sense of this, but generally, because you talked about state lunch, we're probably going to go grab a beer after this recording. Excuse me. So when we're standing outside waiting for a business, waiting to get a table at state lunch, for example, we're not necessarily smoking within 20 feet. We're not throwing our garbage. We're not going to the bathroom.
Thank you for not doing that.
There's a bunch of just the kind of the normal respectful things that I think we just take for granted that we act in a certain way. But when we do see homeless people who they're not they don't have the same kind of set of norms and standards for some reason. Like, do you have an understand? Like, what's the disconnect? Why do we act one way, and then people who are homeless are acting a different way? Is it just the addiction, or is it like, we're not a part of your community, so fuck you?
I think it's a level of addiction, mental illness. And nobody sees me anyway. Why are they going to see me here? And
so it's like they're already invisible. Why should anyone care what I'm doing?
It's pretty profound.
Breaks your heart a little bit, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And then I go in and say,
I see you.
Joe, you cannot sleep here. You need to get out of that trash bag and move along. Also, Joe, do you need a blanket and some warm socks? Because I can help you with that. But you can't stay here.
Have you noticed this witnessing? Have you noticed any change by actually engaging with people in a way and just being like, "Hey, I see you. That you're actually there. I acknowledge you."
The best part of my day is I park across the street, so parking district. Please be nice to that little parking lot. And walking across the sidewalk. Good morning, Victoria. And I say, "Good morning, Gary. Good morning, Andy." I know their names. They're people. They're humans. They might be down on their in a bad season of life or down in their luck, but knowing, looking people in the eye, and that can be scary because I can tell when they're drunk or high, and that's, don't let the 10 people who are really not making great choices in our alcoves and in our entryways of downtown Augusta ruin it for the wonderful people that are at that soup kitchen every day. I encourage anybody listening to this to come on down and volunteer, serve some coffee, or if that's not your shtick, come down and have a cup of coffee and a meal. I'll serve you a meal. We don't ask anything. You come in and sit. You two can come in anytime. I've gone in because it's home cooked meals, and when Donna, the kitchen manager, makes a good meal, I'm like, I'm going to go have lunch over there, and I'm going to talk and just get the finger on the pulse. What's going on? What do you need? What's going on in your world? And it's a really eye-opening piece of, and it's not like, oh, let's all be bleeding hearts or all be, no, it's like, let's just meet another human being. There's a movement in, like Rotary magazine had this, where they do a living library, they call it. So you've heard of it?
Yep.
And they have people come into like the library area. And the article had a homeless person, a prostitute, an addict, a lawyer, just all walks of life. There's like 20 people. But what I honed in on, and the parts I really read and reread, were the fact that they had a homeless person be that vulnerable for that long. And I'd say that, like, I don't want to maybe be that vulnerable for that long, right? Yeah. We're talking, in this podcast, we're talking about my work. I love that. I can talk about that. But if you were like, we're going to do a deep dive into Victoria Abbott, that's too vulnerable for me. And I don't really want to do that. So it's interesting that this living library is so successful. And I'm so impressed by the people that are that vulnerable. The 20 people that show up and do that is really impressive. So it humanizes who people are, and that people make bad decisions, but it doesn't mean they're terrible people.
It does seem that part of a start of dealing with this situation is finding more compassion for other people.
Yeah. And definitely if they're in your alcove or in your entryway or blocking your business, and, unfortunately there's a horrible incident in the news right now, and I don't need to really make a huge opinion on that or deep dive into that, but when people are in a mental health crisis, this happened in New York City on the subway, right? And when people are in a mental health crisis and they're in fight or flight, like, you have to understand the different pieces that come into, like, it's not when you're a teenager and you have angst and nobody cares. It's like literally nobody cares. That's the feeling. And it's hard to put ourselves in that spot, but I also think it can be scary. And I say, like, humanize them and talk to them and da-da-da. Well, maybe that day they don't want to talk to people. I mean, do you guys want to talk to everybody all day long?
There's days that I definitely don't want to talk to anybody.
I need my quiet days. I need to recharge this battery, right? So don't bombard the downtown Augusta homeless population, I think that if we just realize that that's somebody's kid, that's somebody's brother, that's somebody's uncle, and they're having a bad day, and yeah, seeing somebody in crisis, or if you say, oh, please move off my steps, or you can't smoke here, and they start screaming at you. It just happened today on a lunch service. I asked somebody, you can't smoke here. There's a sign right here. She called me every name in the book, and I said, are you finished? Are you finished? Do you want lunch today? Like, we need to just bring it down a gear. Let's talk through this. Is there something I can help you with?
Well, sometimes you have no idea who you are interacting with. I spent probably 10 years working for a guy who was homeless, lived on the streets for about 3 years in East Hastings in Vancouver, which is a really dark and depressing, part of the world. And, he had the opportunity to get cleaned up, turn his life around, and become an entrepreneur, and hired me and gave me a job. So I do think that we do need to have more compassion for people, and we just, I think, forget that people are people, and that people need to be acknowledged. And I do think that what you said about people feeling invisible anyway, so why does it matter, really just kind of speaks to me a bit, in the fact that we could do a better job of witnessing, or at least recognizing other people as people, at least as a very first step of at least trying to start to deal with this problem.
Right. If you had told me 5 years ago that this is what I would be doing and loving it every day, I'd have been like, no, there's no way. There's no way. It takes time, and maybe it's just a good morning, hi, or just look at them. Don't look beyond them. I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like for everybody, and it's hard. I just want to acknowledge that it's not like it's a easy thing to do.
Well, I think it's also hard enough, and I see this all the time walking on the rail trail, just for normal people to even acknowledge each other, I think is a hard thing just in general, let alone somebody who is very, very different from you, has a very different living situation from you. So I do think that it's actually a really big challenge, just even looking someone in the eye when you pass them on the street. Give that a shot. It's not easy.
And we
sustained eye contact is hard.
Exactly. And we all go through life like with these like blinders on, where it's like we're focused on getting from point A to point B, and that's the most important thing.
Isn't there like a study thing about New York City, Manhattan being one of the loneliest places because nobody looks at you?
Yeah, actually there's a famous painting. That painting actually speaks to the loneliness of urban life.
Well, and just full disclosure, I'm a Canadian. So your Surgeon General, I believe, if that's the right term, I think was actually talking about how loneliness is becoming a serious issue that needs some attention. And I feel like I've been tracking this probably for the last couple of years, just thinking about the whole COVID situation, addiction to social media, doom scrolling, all of the disconnection that we already have through, for the Zoom school for kids, Zooming, for work, all that type of stuff.
We're pack animals. We need like the healing power of touch. If you get this is a little woo woo, but if you think about how your body responds to a hug, do an 8-second hug.
Yep.
Everybody at home listening to this, go to your loved one or your dog or your cat and just hold that and feel the change in your endocrine system, and your hormones change, your levels of serotonin change after 8 seconds in a hug. Think of COVID, like you're saying. I'm agreeing. It's lost. It was lost.
You actually had kind of a name change yourself. It was Bread of Life Ministries, and now it's simply Bread of Life.
Yes, because I'm not a pastor or a minister. And really, when people kept asking me that, I worked with a PR group and said, can we do some studies and see if people think we are? Because we don't discriminate. Anybody can come into shelter, how you identify, how you, whatever you need. Bread of Life is here for you. And if people aren't coming into Bread of Life because they think it's a secular organization, then we're not fulfilling our mission and we're not serving everybody. And Bread of Life doesn't discriminate however you identify or whatever you need. Again, everybody is treated individually and we meet people where they're at so we can serve how we should, right?
What was the original reason for adding the ministries to it?
It wasn't added, it was part of it. That's how Carolyn saw it. And she is a minister now. She wasn't then, but she is now. And she's an amazing human, actually. But it was really to clear up. I worked with a PR campaign to see if this is what people saw Bread of Life, and they definitely did, that it was a church. What church are you affiliated with? The questions I would get, and I'd be like, what the heck? Because I know what I do every day, and I know what my organization does every day. But seeing it from the outside, it's like, no, not a church. So we just took it down to Bread of Life, and to feed, shelter, and empower, kind of as it's not even a tagline, it's just 3 statement words to show what we do throughout all of our different service areas. So I think it was something that was, needed for a change, and plus a good rebranding to freshen up is nice.
Hey, I like the name change. I think it makes it maybe a little bit more inclusive. So I'm a fan.
Yeah.
Me too.
Is it Joe Rogan? I don't know. There's a podcast.
Joe Rogan is a man.
Yes.
He has a podcast.
He has a podcast,
and
yes, it is. It's a good one. I was going to make a joke about like having this be a drinking podcast, so that by the time it came to the rapid fire, it would be like really off the record. But I'm glad we're not doing that.
Well,
anyway.
we might save that for the second podcast. We're going to see how it goes with you.
Yeah,
first,
we're still a work in progress.
You guys are doing great. This is so fun.
In development.
Yeah. So I just wanted to say that, Bread of Life is not in a silo, and the work we do, it takes a village to help a village. And I feel super lucky to be in Augusta, where working with the city manager, the city departments, city council, everybody's really supportive and sees that there's there's a lot of agencies and a lot of people doing a lot of great work in this city. So it's really nice to work someplace that you're not constantly swimming upstream or not getting any support. And I'm not talking financial support. It's like, hey, Chief Mills and I went to grad school together. So I've known him for a long time and watched his career. He's phenomenal. He's a phenomenal human, and watched his career grow. So Chief Mills, I see him at the gym almost every day. So it's like, hey, can we do coffee with a cop? Remember when we did that a few years ago in Augusta? Can we bring that back? But come into the soup kitchen. And it's like, by the end of the day, I've got the name of the person and scheduling it in. And that's the support I'm talking about.
So there's an accessibility to the other stakeholders. And I think as you were talking about the person who came from Dallas and was talking about the coordinated effort, it seems like that there's an opportunity to actually reach out to those people within different departments, whether or not it's city or other groups, but to actually have that access to people, to actually get people on the same page. So
yeah, I think, and it's something that it's happening. And I think with the audience of this podcast and just talking with you guys, you might not know this, but there's a lot of work being done in the city. And I know right now we have people who are unhoused or homeless, and we can see them, and they're right. I mean, if I looked out this window a little harder, I can literally see them. But that there is work being done, and they're not forgotten. So, and I also want to, on that note, speak to, I said this at City Council last night as well, like, people have free will, and we can't forget that. Like, we can offer the Taj Mahal of shelters. We can offer you free addiction recovery services, free this, free anything. But if you don't want to change your life, if I came in and said, Michael Hall, you need to do this, this, and this, and you're going to live here, and you're going to do this, and this is going to be, your chores are going to be sweeping this floor, and blah, blah, blah. And you're going to be like, I don't want to make my bed every day. I don't want to follow your rules. I don't want to do this, because you have free will. But so does everybody in this country.
unless you're one of my nephews, and when their dad tells them to go to bed, they go to bed.
Well, yes, I guess, yeah, there's a certain subset of our population, the chitlins.
I've actually kind of wondered about that a little bit too, and obviously this is a bit of a tough love, Now, my former boss would tell you it's the same thing. Unless someone is ready to change, you can't make them change. And he's counseled other friends that I've had where their children have fallen into addiction, and that they had to get to a point where they just had to stop being there. They had to stop helping them. They had to let them hit their own rock bottom to make that decision to actually go and do it themselves. Like they couldn't intervene anymore. And that was a huge challenge.
Yeah. Well, addiction doesn't discriminate ever. You can be the upper 2% of this country. You could be low income. It doesn't matter where you fall into addiction. You might.
Yep.
And like in philanthropy, right? When you talk to donors and you're cultivating donors, it's usually like a 8 to 10 ask before you get a donation.
Yep.
Industry standard.
Yep.
In the homelessness industry, it's like 12 to 15 asks Come into shelter. Come into shelter.
We're going to get to hopefully something fun. Michael, what do you think? Do you think this is going to turn out okay?
Let's give it a shot.
All right. So, longtime fan of the Actors Studio. Most of you listening probably have no idea what this is, but a man by the name of James Lipton had a series of questions that he would ask his guests, and we decided that we would give this a shot. So, Victoria,
I'm nervous.
what's your favorite curse word?
Definitely. What if my mom listens to this?
I think you have a pass.
Okay, the F-bomb. A lot, every day.
Okay.
What are your turnoffs?
I think I'm a Capricorn, so it's definitely disloyal or lying, and not the white lies, like the full-on lies.
What profession other than your own would you like to attempt?
I think like the cruise ship. Isn't there a TV show, something about a captain under...
The Love Boat?
No,
We're probably talking about below deck.
Yes.
Oh,
Sailing
below
yacht.
deck.
I would want to be a captain of a ship. I do have a kind of a I like
You have a control issue. You like to be in charge. You want to be the captain.
yeah, I do. Definitely.
What's your favorite quote?
Okay, I did have to write this one down to get it right. Margaret Mead. Never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that ever has. I have loved that and have had it on every bulletin board throughout my whole life, probably since high school. And, it's true. Look at us at the Downtown Alliance.
That's
Even
a good
Bread
one.
of
That's a good
Life, the Rotary. It's like if you just come together and say, hey, we can do this. Let's do it.
If heaven exists and you get to the pearly gates, what do you want God to say to you?
Welcome. I've been waiting for you.
Okay, and this is our last question. So, Victoria, give us a song that would be the soundtrack of your life.
This is a super loaded question, BT Dub. This is a difficult one. But Elle King, Lucky. I don't know if you've heard it, if you're a country music fan, but I'm lucky. I like my life. I like myself. I've done the work for hard work in my career, hard work in my life. I bought my own house all by myself a couple of years ago and renovated it. And I just feel lucky that I have the friends and family and town that I live in. I'm just a lucky girl. Get to do what I love every day. How lucky is that?
It's also a Pharrell song, isn't it?
Yes, but not that one.
Not that one. Victoria, I think we want to thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you. Great job, everybody. Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me kick it off. That's a lot of pressure, but this has been really fun, and it's a beautiful space. I can't wait for it to open.
Thank you. And hey, lastly, if people want to get involved with Bread of Life, how do they get in touch with you?
Go to our website at mainbreadoflife.org. Stop down to our main office on Water Street on the north end. North end matters, right? And 626-3434. If you need any assistance in housing, shelter, with your philanthropic dollars, if you want to support our mission or if you want to volunteer, we're here for it. We'd appreciate all the help.